Hello YouTubers, today's video is going to be a look at the state campground and the nearby Mission Point Lighthouse in Traverse City. Every year after Labor Day, we try to take the 2-hour drive up from Newaygo along M37 to Traverse City, Michigan. We wait until after Labor Day because the parks usually thin out and it's a lot easier to get a reservation and possibly a better spot. Also, most of the tourists have all gone back home because their kids are going back to school. So Traverse City seems to be a little bit easier to get around without all the traffic and congestion. This particular year, we had a little heavier schedule since we went to not only Grand Haven State Park but also Holland State Park late in the summer and early in the fall. So Traverse City didn't come until much later in September, October. Even though it was still a little bit too early for the trees to hit full color, even with the overcast day, the colors weren't too bad to see and made for a very pleasant drive. When we arrived in Traverse City, we noticed that even though it was later on in the fall, that we still had quite a bit of traffic. I think basically because there was a lot of people hanging around since COVID had delayed or kept kids out of the schools. Traverse City State Park is located right on M37 in Traverse City, directly across the street from Grand Traverse Bay. The park is not only one of the largest parks in the state of Michigan, but it's also probably one of the most popular ones as well. I apologize for not taking a lot of pictures of this park. There's been an awful lot of it already on YouTube. But one of the things I think I want to point out is a lot of it is under reconstruction right now. In fact, the front section, just as you get past the gate, is pretty much closed off. They're in the process of resurfacing a lot of the spots. I've even seen a few spots where they've poured concrete, not only in this newer area, but also in some of the older areas, which I'm kind of wondering if whether or not they're actually going to start paving all their spots throughout the park. Actually, over on the left, it looks like they've redone or built an entirely new bathhouse. There is one similar to it towards the back of the park, and in between, there's a couple of older bathhouses as well, which I kind of question whether or not they'll probably be redoing those too. Most of the existing spots are rather spacious. We had our 30-foot trailer in here without any problems whatsoever. Also, I've noticed that in some of the spots, there could be more than one tent where they'll have like even 2 or 3 tents occupying the same location. One of the things I do have to admit, though, is the road is rather narrow, and the most recent spot that we had was extremely unlevel, and it was rather difficult to get in and out of because there wasn't that much room to turn around. Fortunately, there wasn't anybody across the street from us, so that gave me a little bit more room to navigate. This park isn't any different than a lot of the other Michigan state parks, as they all have fire rings on each spot. and they all have electricity as well, both 30 and I believe there's some with 50 amps. None of the spots, including the newly paved spots, as far as I can tell, have anything other than electricity. There isn't any water available or sewer hookups, but that is available at the very front of the park uh, and their dump stations. There are water locations or potable water spouts throughout the park. If you have a map, they're pretty well marked. You would need a water bandit if you wanted to use them to hook up to a hose if you're parked close enough to it. Other than that, you can still use them for filling up a pail or a bucket or a jug. It does look like all those water stations have been updated, so they all have fresh poured concrete and barriers around them, and it looks like it's all fresh new plumbing. Even though I said our spot was extremely unlevel, that's more of an exception to the rule. The last few years we stayed here, we had plenty of spots that were really level, and I only had to do a little bit of adjustment, if any. This year was probably one of the worst years where I actually had a bad spot, and it took quite a bit of wood and ingenuity just to get to the point where I'm halfway decent level. On the right is another example of several tents being in the same location, but that doesn't seem to be bothering them at all. Here we're entering the front part of the park where they're currently under a lot of construction. They have had a couple of RVs in these couple of these spots, but you'll also see some of the newly paved spots that are going to be available. That they also have in the back part of the park as well. You can get a good look at one of those spots right on the left, which actually happens to be right next to one of the new water stations. It appears that they are thinning out some of these trees and it's making the lots a little bit more spacious and easier to navigate in and out of. There's another couple of spots, one on the left and one on the right, where they look like there's plenty of room for any size rig. I don't know if you could have seen it or not, but we just passed the dump station on the right. Then there's ice machines up here by the uh, gate, and as well as there's trash containers down here on the right where you can dump all of your trash. A little bit north of the gate, there is a bridge where it's a pedestrian walk that goes over M37 to the Grand Traverse Bay Beach. After turning left out of the park, we took a drive down towards Old Mission Point, which is located on the west arm of Grand Traverse Bay. Old Mission Point, which is about 27 miles or about 35 minutes from the Traverse City State Park, is a very scenic drive with the bay views on the right-hand side of the road. Our primary destination is going to be the Mission Point Lighthouse, but our first stop is going to be at the Mission Point General Store. The store is definitely a must-see location. Withstanding 163 years in business, they have the oldest post office in one place and in one room in Michigan. Outside you'll find an old style phone as well as a Coke machine. The grape yards on the property has a scenic view, and you're welcome with their permission to sample some of the grapes. Inside there's a collection of eclectic and antique items that were sold in the past, as well as current items that you can buy at the present. Also, there's a delicatessen that has very good food. I highly recommend that you ask the owner about his mother, who has long since passed and is now upstairs in her attic. You will certainly get a big kick out of that.
I can prove this. Okay. Grandma passed years ago. Okay. And she's still up there. Yeah. Okay. And see if we can conjure her up. I never see her. Oh. But you can hear her. Oh boy. Isn't that right, Grandma?
That's right, little Jack.
Grandma? Gosh. Mine? Lucky if I can get to him. You can pick some. You pick. You want to make some wine?
No.
You're the wine girl.
We are. We drink wine. We don't make it.
Oh. We leave the wine. We leave the grapes on the vine until they ferment there.
Well, that makes it easier, doesn't it?
And sometimes we pick in ice with the snow.
Are you making those for ice wine?
And we make ice wine.
Yeah. Is that really what it is? There's so many.
It is now.
There's so many. Oh, I love this. There's so many of them on the vine out there.
I know, they're beautiful.
Yeah, they are.
That's a French hybrid called a Chambousine. They have their exits, their entrances, and one man in his lifetime plays many roles, many parts. His life being 7 acts. The first, the mewling and puking in his nurse's arm. And then the schoolboy, walking unwillingly with shiny rose cheeks, a satchel in hand to school. Goes all the way to the end, and the final stage of all, Song's eyes, Song's teeth, Song's teeth. No, I would go.
They got some neat things here. I bet you that they're pretty expensive. Figured out. They got pictures of Abraham Lincoln back there, trying to go way back.
Just a few miles away, at the very end of the Mission Point, you'll find the Mission Point Lighthouse. The lighthouse is quite an historic spot, and there is an awful lot to see. Parking is free, by the way, and for a small fee, you can climb all the way up to the very top of the steeple. Also on the property is the Hessler House, which was born in 1856, which was later used for residence of the lighthouse keepers. To say that Traverse City has more to see than just the beach is an understatement. The Mission Point General Store and the Mission Point Lighthouse is only a small sampling of what Traverse City area has to offer. You can stay in the Grand Traverse Bay area for weeks at a time, and I guarantee you'll never see everything that they have to offer. I have only highlighted only 2 of the must-see locations in this area, and I suggest that you do a little bit more research, and I'm sure you'll find plenty other locations that you would love to visit. I hope you enjoyed this look at Mission Point as well as the Grand Traverse Bay State Park. And if you like this video, please hit the thumbs up. If you haven't already, please subscribe. And most of all, thanks for watching.